It's over. We're finally free. Ladies and gentlemen, on June 27th, 2025, the pilot for Me and My Friends was uploaded. Yes, what's considered one of the biggest lost media cases of the past decade, the lost live-action demo for what would eventually become the Backyardigans was found. And if you thought the search for it was crazy, oh boy, you better buckle up because things are gonna get weird. Whatever your expectations were of this search, your mind is about to be blown from this entire thing. This is not a find I was expecting this year, and given how many lost pilots were found that week, like the Dora pilot and Phineas and Ferb, I think 2025 may be shaping up to be the year of found pilot episodes. Today, we're going to catch you up on the search from the last update video, review the pilot, and hear a completely different side of the story that's sure to change everything. So with that being said, sit back, relax, grab a snack, get some water, make a flag with some fabric and cardboard tube, and get cozy, because today, at long last, we're diving into our very last Me and My Friends update. I honestly want to say that there was a lot of in-depth investigation after the last update, but honestly, a lot of my time spent with this topic after our last update has just kind of been borderline awful. Of course, the last thing we found was proof that folks at the Backyardigans Wiki had been deliberately feeding us false information while searching for this pilot, as evident from this wiki edit made by one of the admins of the wiki to the former Me and My Friends page on the Lost Media Archive. The edit claims that information on the page was incorrect and that the admins already had copies of both pilots. Neato, to which we tried to reach out to the admins about these claims and they never responded. Instead, we decided to make this information public, rather more public than it was because you could literally just find this on your own, and both L Supersonic Q and I made our videos talking about the situation. What followed these videos were something we had never anticipated, and the impact exploded into something way bigger than we could actually handle. The immediate response that followed our videos was an instant vandalism of the Backyardigans Wiki, which, why would you do that? Like, if they had the pilot, why would you actively destroy their work? That's not going to get them to release it. That's like, if I wanted something you had, and I just decided to key your car, like, you're not going to give me that, especially not now. The admins, of course, stayed silent on the matter and did what they could to repair the site. I believe it was a week before it was fully restored. I suppose it is my fault in thinking that we were supposed to be the bigger person here, to not fight over the pilot to a children's show. But then it gets worse. Our group and another independent searcher had both contacted the same lead, a puppeteer assistant for the pilot, to which they released some pictures of the meerkats that we had never seen. We never got permission to share these images, so I chose not to, and I still choose not to. However, they found their way to the public eye anyways and began to float around. I wasn't too bothered by this until a contact from the search had posted something into social media that caught everyone's eye. This contact had already clarified to have nothing from the project, as stated on my very first video, on their website, various wikis, and so on. And you'd have to know that to know they were involved, so why are you even contacting them about it? Like, you'd have to know that they had nothing more to offer in order to figure out where to contact them. They basically had a crash out on Instagram, which is justified, restating that they had very little involvement from this demo and they wanted to be left alone about it, bashing the lost media community for their obsessive overreach into their privacy to inquire about the project. This poor person wanted to be left alone, but was instead being harassed about a kids show pilot. Honestly, I thought it couldn't get worse, but we'll get to that. I wanted to truly distance myself from this pilot after all of this. Was giving this pilot the level of popularity it received actually worth it? It seemed that I had created just more problems for myself and others. This problem, however, wasn't just exclusive to the search, as the harassment issues aren't just contained here. It was a problem in the Super Y pilot search, it continued to be a problem in the Dora pilot search. Why were so many people insistent that this was the way to discuss lost media, especially regarding something made for literal toddlers? I decided in April I would distance myself from lost media and work on some projects independently from this hobby, and I would watch from a distance whatever updates would come. I had no intention of fully leaving, but with all the people involved with me and my friends actually having their lives affected by this stupid thing, I felt that maybe a break from this was needed. I was there when Down the Mine was found. I was interested in the new clips from Big Star Secret, but I tried my best to not get involved, and I think that this was a relatively good choice as the toxicity of certain individuals only festered upon attention. The closer we got to June, I feel like I did start to get some answers about this pilot. For example, we finally got the answers we were looking for about that pink frog picture. He's not from Me and My Friends, and we know that now that the pilot is out, but the puppet was simply an additional creation of 3 Design, the company who made the meerkats, and the pictures came from some promotional pictures of a rehearsal. Just have to wonder what he was made for specifically though, but like the heads of a hydra, 2 more would grow in the absence of 1. For every 1 answer we got, another 2 would take its place. This is still true even after the pilot was found. It was June 26, 2025. I was pinged by user Shishigumi in our creators Discord. In fact, he pinged everybody just to show that 2 new pictures of me and my friends had been found. We were surprised, to say the least. These were the first actual pictures of the production since the Nick Studios Florida video a decade ago. We all stayed in a Discord call to see how the situation would unfold. A Discord user we'll call P had posted 2 screenshots of the pilot and teased that they had the whole thing, posting another picture. They claimed that they would upload the pilot and upscale to 60 FPS. Everybody got excited and I jumped the gun with a Twitter post just kind of teasing it, which backfired because I had, even though I didn't say they were going to release it, in fact, all I had tweeted was hieroglyphs, I had to resend this tweet. P had gotten cold feet, speaking very cryptically about the whole ordeal and deleting entire messages. They would talk about details that didn't make any sense and would contradict our knowledge of the pilot, in fact, showing a very surface-level understanding of it. They stated that they could no longer release it now, that folks would have to wait, and feared that some unnamed entity might come after them, and apparently not Viacom or Paramount. This caught us really off guard and made us rather suspicious. We had no idea where this had come from, and suddenly this person was talking about some unknown entity that could rule against them. We said, alright. However, we pushed for more info. P posted once more in the chat that if somebody knew what Wonderland was, to reach out to them. They deleted the message. Let's talk about what Wonderland is, because yes, I know what it is, and we're going to be stepping into some suspicious territory and touching on some claims made by folks at 4chan which cannot be truly verified, so please take them as grains of salt, no matter how it sounds. Furthermore, I am not accusing anyone of anything here, I'm simply presenting the information as it is. Wonderland is the internal system hosted by Disney, their back-end system where their assets are managed. This raises a few red flags about where this pilot may have come from. After my tweet apologizing for the miscommunication for jumping the gun, I was made aware of a thread on 4chan that was actually talking about the whole situation. Someone claimed that they knew who P was and claimed that they had back-end access to Paramount and only used it for digging up Making Fiends content, and claimed that they would post the pilot in a week if P didn't. The storm finally died down a little, however, a random anon finally dropped a copy on 4chan completely out of the blue. 27 years after the creation of the pilot, it would finally see the light of day. To top it off in a nice little bow, a card was added at the beginning to honor series creator Janice Burgess. At long last, the pilot was finally found. Things could slowly start to go back to normal. People would finally be left alone, right? Never once have I claimed that I thought this would be good. I never expected it to be good, and I still don't think it's very good after watching it. I can understand why this didn't get greenlit. It's not very stimulating for younger children, and holy moly does this look expensive. I'm going to walk you through this pilot, and I'm not going to use pictures because Paramount has already started going after it. Instead, here's some lovely drawings I did with my art tablet. They're not good. The pilot starts with the characters introducing themselves, and it's actually those 3 seconds we saw from the Nick Studios Florida video. They also say the title of the thing! It's just the title card and a panning shot of the backyard. Pablo comes along and tells us all that he's gonna play flag tag with his friends. Something I never considered was voice actors for this thing, and it honestly explains why none of the physical actors knew anything about this pilot. And furthermore, these voices are adults now, like probably in their 30s. Pablo goes into the park to play and meets the meerkats who tell him that Uniqua, who is bringing the flags for flag tag, isn't there yet. Pablo has to wait, and he hates waiting. He goes over to Tyrone and Tasha, who are playing, and asks if they'd like to wait with him, to which they state they are waiting and keep playing. Now, Pablo doesn't seem to understand that you can still do stuff while you wait, and his idea of waiting is just idling and twiddling his fingers, or fins, because he's a penguin. Are they fins, or are they I don't know. This pilot shows that the intended demographic was way younger than the final series, which I believe also contributed to it not getting chosen. Finally, Uniqua arrives with the flags, however, they're not attached to the flagpoles, and they need to glue them before playing. They glue them, and Pablo grows impatient, having to wait for them to dry. He hurries the process, and as they play flag tag, the flags come apart. Uniqua has a massive crash out, yelling at Pablo, and hides in the shed, which they design an entire interior to this shed, only for it to pretty much go unused. Pablo promises to wait so they can play, and the meerkats explain that he can wait and have fun at the same time. Pablo sings about this and dances, and finally, the flags are ready. Pablo talks to the viewers and tells them he's glad he waited. And that's the pilot. The whole moral was about waiting. The irony here has more layers than a good parfait. So that was the pilot that people have lost their minds over. So surely, now that it's found, things can calm down. Things did not calm down. The general consensus is that someone had backdoor access to Nickelodeon assets and had leaked the pilot. Fun stuff, right? Immediately following this, posts were made everywhere. Twitter, Bluesky, YouTube. The Lost Media Wiki Discord server had to be put on slow mode for the thread about the pilot. Discussion was rampant, and we were now living in a post-me and my friends timeline. It's generally agreed that the pilot came from some sort of backdoor leak. Unfortunately for us, though, the copy we ended up with is lower quality than what P shared, but it's still nice to have it nonetheless. It came to our attention that after long silence, one admin had come forward with an edit to the Me and My Friends page on the Backyardigans wiki. The edit came from Melodulus, and the reasoning for the edit read, "The jig is up," not my idea by the way, so the page can finally be finished. The edit reasoning reading as if it were a direct message to an audience or even an individual. Melodulus would then post to their message wall regarding this update to the page. What I can say now is that I uploaded my copy with the opening slate intact against the demands of my collaborators here. It was up for hours until Paramount took it down. Whether or not Paramount was actually Paramount or a certain someone from this wiki using Paramount credentials, I'm not sure. But I'm done with this. The truth must come out. And, you know who you are. If you're reading this, I know you're furious right now, but I'm ignoring your text. This has gone on long enough. My update from 13 hours ago was before the release. That being said, I'm switching sides and released my copy with the opening slate intact. I have strong suspicions who the copyright striker is, a certain someone I know using Paramount credentials. I'm the one uploading my copy against his demands. Plus, it was Kybsey who started the whole don't release stuff from Nick Central, keep 'em secret nonsense years ago. Melodulus had turned against the decisions of the real gatekeeper behind the wiki. An additional post was made by Melodulus stating there's a whole other side of the story and has gone unheard. Stay tuned. Just like that, we had a million more questions, and one last post, Melodulus dropped a huge bombshell regarding the gatekeeping situation. No, I was not the one sabotaging anything. I tried to be honest whenever possible. Even with my edits back in 2015 to 2016, I was honest and upfront about what we had, only to later be threatened into silence by others. Certain people know my real-life details and phone number, and use that to their advantage. I have always wanted to release everything. I have receipts to back this up, which I am actively compiling. But unlike most people involved with the situation, I actually have a job that takes up most of my time, so things have been slow. From this post alone, we found out that Melodulus had actively been threatened by others to keep this information private. He wasn't a willing participant in this situation, instead being forced into submission by those who had his personal details, and contact information, and more. Suddenly it became clear to us why only 2 specific admins had reached out to us. They weren't the ones who were truly in control. Admins like Pablo or Melodulus had actually been trying to help us, but couldn't due to the threats behind the veil of the Backyardigans. They weren't lying to us. The information given to them by the gatekeeper was falsified from the start. That's why their info directly clashed with ours. Puzzle pieces started to fit together, and that's when Melodulus reached out to us directly. Moving forward, we're going to be diving into the hole that the wiki admins were under by a user we'll simply refer to as K. Melodulus, and I may refer to him as just Mel because you all know that I still can't pronounce his name, had finally reached out to us regarding the hoarding situation, and we're all dying to hear his side of the story. I'm going to summarize it as I can't share all the details just simply due to his safety and the safety of the other admins. Sometime around the hoarding situation was made public, a Kiwi Farms forum thread was made about the admins, compiling all the information about them that the users could find, including personal information leading to doxing. This was being used as a threat against the admins, which caused them to dip off the internet shortly after the thread's creation. During the early days of the Backyardigan wiki, the admins were kids. Like actually going to school and stuff. Back then, they were introduced to Kay, a user who is passionate about all things Nickelodeon, in fact, maybe a little too passionate as they would get rather possessive about the content they had. Which brings us to Nick Central, a back-end system that Kay had access to, which was basically just Nickelodeon asset management in the same way that Wonderland is to Disney. Kay would actively pass around this material from Nick Central, however mostly kept it private and didn't want it reaching outside of the admin circle. When Kay became an admin for the wiki, they convinced the others to give them their personal information, names, phone numbers, and more for a more streamlined form of contact. Because of this, Kay had an unhealthy control over the admins, and after finding the Me and My Friends pilot sometime between 2015 and 16, was adamant in keeping that private. That didn't ever sit very well with Melodulus, and that is present in various emails. Unfortunately, both Melodulus and Poblor, the other admin that had reached out to us, were both essentially being held hostage. This sort of blew up when user GenPen had gotten us in contact with the admins. It's generally believed that GenPen was an alternative account used to implant K into the search without having to directly be involved. Poblor and Melodius were sent to help the situation, although the information they had was, unbeknownst to them, wrong, and purposely so, from K to keep their pilot in their hands. They weren't allowed to make any mentions of the Nick Central content, me and my friends included, without being threatened. Both Melodulus and Poblor had an honest intention to help us find new information that they didn't have on the pilot, but with threats made by K keeping them bound to secrecy regarding their copy, they couldn't mention much. So they kept their mouths quiet and did what they could to help us, making no mention of their copy, the biggest secret they had, despite the proof of them having one existing hidden in article edits on the Lost Media Archive, something openly and honestly revealed by Melodulus years earlier. They ultimately came to the decision that this was a big risk, and all contact with the admin ceased. When P began to tease their copy of the Me and My Friends pilot, K caught wind of the event and was furious. A new copy was out there and was soon to be made public. Having enough of the situation and threats of K, along with the doxing and harassment from the Kiwi Farms thread and various Lost Media fanatics, Melodulus decided that the charade had gone on long enough, and to go against the judgment of K, and to finally post his copy of the Me and My Friends pilot. Melodulus believed that K may be behind the copyright strikes, as it was uncharacteristically fast for Paramount and Viacom to find out about the pilot being posted. Among all the re-uploads of the pilot, Melodulus would upload his copies of it as well, to which Paramount would claim them all. So, we now had the final full story of what had happened behind the scenes of the Wiki, and the receipts to back it up. These admins weren't purposely gatekeeping, they were victims, being threatened by someone obsessed with keeping their exclusive content out of the eyes of the public. We asked Melodulus for an official statement regarding everything that had happened, and I'm going to read it to you. Hey everyone, I'm Melodulus. I'm one of the admins for the Backyardigans Wiki, and I wanted to clear some things up. The hoarding situation was much more complicated than it seems. One user manipulated us into keeping things hidden, using personal information against us. I never agreed with it. I've provided proof that I wanted to share everything from the start, but was prevented from doing so. I finally released what I had earlier this week and started planning on releasing more, but over the last few days, the harassment has gotten insane. Some of it stemming from a Kiwi Farms forum. People have gone as far as doxing us and cataloging hundreds of our edits from when we were kids, all while calling us obsessive about a baby show, while hypocritically obsessing over us. This kind of behavior doesn't do anything productive. Take it from me, one of the admins of the Backyardigans Wiki itself, that the Backyardigans is not that serious. Melodulus. Who knew that a kids show pilot would literally be this complicated? To Melodulus, Poblor, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I generalized you guys all together, and had I known about the situation with K, I wouldn't have called you guys out so publicly. To my viewers, I understand if not everything is totally clear in this explanation, and to that I say, you just have to trust me on this one, as I've reviewed all the information provided by the admins, and I can say that without a reasonable doubt, that they were simply victims with no ill will towards our search. There was no intentional sabotage from Melodulus and Poblor. K fed everyone differing information, all while trying to protect what they had. I kindly ask that we leave me and my friends and the admins alone for good, as this whole debacle is finally over. You know, except for the fact that there are so many new questions. Following the issues revolving around the admins and their privacy, we began to talk about what questions we had moving forward. We were finally free from the Me and My Friends beast, but a few questions from our search remained. First thing that comes to mind was this odd 3D animation we found by an official studio, which we believe to have been related to Me and My Friends. However, there's nothing indicating that now, and it's oddly specific and obscure. I wonder what the deal with that was. One of the biggest questions we had about this was the title card for the pilot, with the recording date not matching the tape that our contact who had their own tape had. The date written on their tape does not match what's on the title card for the pilot. This opened up a whole debate whether or not they actually had a full copy of the pilot, as they claimed that they watched it with their kids, but that would mean it's an unfinished copy. Either that or it's just a rehearsal, which is odd to say the least. I spoke to the contractors who handled the tapes last year, and they confirmed that Nickelodeon got all of their tapes back when those contractors were bought out. We know from the Nick Theaters Florida video that someone did digitize the pilot early on, and it's possible that the copy in the Nick Central archive was that digitized copy. Nick Central became a main point of debate among our discussions. Was this pilot a direct result of a new security breach or an old security breach? Was this coordinated or was this just something by circumstance? You know, we may never get answers to these questions, and that's okay. At least to me it is. Being involved with the search was crazy, and I had so many questions across the 5 years of my involvement, and I always knew that at the end, I wouldn't have all the answers. And that's the fun of the search. We exhausted every avenue we could find, and yes, a lot of it was torture. We had made so many great memories. What I had thought to just be some weird-looking kids show pilot search turned into the weirdest hunt that led us through death threats and ghosting and harassment and everyone acting really shut off and suspicious, and concluded with the strangest hostage situation over a guy in a Pablo suit. So yeah, that was the search for me and my friends. It's weird to sit here and type this after 5 years. I pretty much got my start with this topic all the way back in 2020 when I was trying to find stuff to do during the pandemic. It's just really strange to think of the domino effect that this ultimately became. If someone didn't strike down El Supersonic Q's first video about the topic, I wonder if I would have been just as interested as I was when I made my first video on it. I wouldn't have ever made the search server, I wouldn't have ever met so many wonderful, amazing people and creators. We probably would have never have found that wiki edit from the archive years ago, and I wonder if anyone would have even bothered leaking it, let alone K controlling the narrative. It's crazy just how much was caused by an insanely small thing happening to me, that being that someone was willing to help me look into this topic. There's a quote I want to share that I believe is relevant to my involvement with this search. It actually comes from Ruby. I've talked about that show on this channel before, you should check it out. It's that one small kindness and one small moment led to such a marvelous transformation. I wanted to share that with you all because I believe that quote has more weight than just being applied to the search. One small kindness that I experienced changed my life, and I'm thankful to every single person who watched my first video. That was one small kindness. I'm thankful to every single person who sent me a message or email or comment, even if it repeated information that I already knew. They did it out of one small kindness. I'm so very thankful to everyone I met during the search who helped me. El Supersonic Q, Rift, Harvey, Ultra Crisp, Mr. Bones, Burr, Alex, even the admins of the wiki. Thank you. Because of that, it caused a marvelous transformation of my life, and I will never forget it. With that, my friends, we're here at the end, where me and my friends has finally been found, and we can sleep knowing we don't have to wake up to more Backyardigans stuff in the morning. Unless you're interested in the CGI pilot. Ooh, yikes. Anyways, guys, I have some more stuff coming soon. I had a video planned for early July, but it got pushed back due to production stuff. But luckily this happened, so I had something good for you all. I have some bigger stuff planned, and hopefully this gives me the kick I need to get back into lost media and stop focusing on my horrible, awful 9 to 5 every day. But we'll see. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching and being here. If you consider you know what? I'm not re-recording. We're at the outro. I don't care. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching and being here. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and tell me what you think in the comments below. Consider subscribing. It's free, and you can click that bell icon to be notified of my next upload. I'm active on social media somewhat, and you can give those a follow if you're interested. And I hope to maybe start streaming again soon one day, so stick around for that. Thank you all so much. As always, it's been a blast, and I will see you all next time. Peace! It's over, me and my friends, it's finally over.